The sun was shining through the dusty windows of room 203. The bell had just rung for class, and the usual buzz of talking and laughing slowly turned into silence. A group of students sat at their desks, some doodling, some texting under the table, others just trying not to fall asleep. Up front, the teacher tapped her marker on the whiteboard, getting everyone's attention. "All right, today we're doing something fun," she said with a smile. "Creative writing. I want you all to write about your family. Doesn't have to be real. It can be funny, wild, or even made up. Just make it interesting." A few kids perked up. Writing wasn't always their favorite thing, but this sounded different. One student, a quiet kid who usually kept to himself, opened his notebook and started writing without hesitation. He didn't need time to think. He already knew exactly what he wanted to say. He wrote about a father who wore shiny watches, drove fast cars, and owned a big house filled with music. He described dinners in fancy restaurants, trips on private jets, and how his dad was known by millions, not just as a businessman, but as a legend. He wrote that his dad was someone who came from nothing and built everything with his own hands. And most importantly, he wrote that his dad was always there for him. When it was time to read the stories out loud, the teacher picked names randomly. One by one, students stood up and shared tales of moms, dads, brothers, and sisters. Some were funny, some were boring, and a few were clearly stretching the truth. But when it was his turn, the room got quiet. He stood up, held his paper tight, and began reading. His voice was soft but clear. As he spoke, the class listened, some curious, some confused, and a few already smirking. "I live with my dad," he said. "He's a big music producer. You might know him as Diddy." There was a pause, then laughter. Not loud, but enough to make him stop and look down. The teacher raised an eyebrow and gave a short laugh. "Okay, so Diddy's your dad now? That's creative," she said, shaking her head. "Let me guess. Next week you'll tell us you've been hanging out with Beyoncé?" Some students giggled nervously. Others looked away, not wanting to make eye contact. The boy stood frozen for a second, then quickly finished reading the rest of his story, his voice cracking slightly. When he sat back down, he folded his paper and stuffed it into his bag like he never wanted to see it again. The teacher moved on to the next student, unaware of what she had just done, but the boy felt it deep inside, a sting that wouldn't go away. Later that day, during lunch, he sat alone near the edge of the cafeteria. A couple of kids walked past and whispered, "Diddy's son, huh?" They laughed and walked off. He didn't respond. He just stared at his tray, pushing food around with his fork. It wasn't just embarrassment, it was shame. He hadn't meant to lie. In his mind, he wasn't lying. He was dreaming. He was hoping. He was trying to feel important, even if just for a moment. Back at home that night, he sat at the kitchen table finishing homework while his little brother played nearby. His grandmother was cooking dinner. She noticed he was quieter than usual. "You okay?" she asked gently. He nodded. "Yeah." She didn't push. She knew better than to ask twice. That night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about what the teacher said, about how everyone laughed and how small he felt. He told himself not to care. But he did. He remembered seeing a video once of Diddy speaking to a group of young people, telling them they could be anything they wanted if they worked hard and believed in themselves. He watched that video over and over when he was sad or tired. It gave him hope. Maybe that's why he wrote what he did. Maybe he didn't just want to impress the class. Maybe he wanted to believe that someone like Diddy, someone powerful, successful, respected, could be proud of him too. The next morning he went back to school like normal. He tried to act like nothing happened. But when he walked into room 203, he avoided looking at the teacher. He sat in the farthest seat from the front and stayed quiet. She didn't notice right away. To her, it was just another class, another assignment. But to him, it was the moment he stopped believing that school was a place where he could truly be himself. And somewhere, deep down, she would remember that day too. Though not yet. Not until much later. Not until it was almost too late. The days passed, but things weren't the same. He used to raise his hand sometimes, try to answer questions, even joke around with a few classmates. But now he stayed quiet. Sat in the back, head down. He didn't want to be seen. Didn't want to be picked again. The teacher didn't notice at first. She was busy with lessons, tests, and other students who kept up. It wasn't until she called on him one day, just a simple question, and he didn't answer, that she looked up from her desk. He was staring out the window, lost in thought. She moved on. But later, when collecting classwork, she saw his paper was blank. Not messy, not half done, just empty. That night, she sat at her desk grading papers. She flipped through them one by one. Most were average, a few were good. Then she came across his notebook, the one where he wrote about Diddy being his dad. She opened it slowly. The words were neat, full of detail. Hope. Maybe a little fantasy, but not lies, not really. She remembered how the class had laughed, how she had laughed too. How quickly she shut him down without thinking. She closed the notebook and leaned back in her chair. Maybe she went too far. A few days later, the school sent home a note, parent-teacher conferences this week. Most parents didn't show up. Some sent grandparents. Others just didn't come. But one afternoon, an older woman walked into the classroom. She wore a worn coat and carried a small bag. Her eyes were tired but kind. The teacher stood up and greeted her. They sat across from each other at a small table near the back. "Your student is very bright," the teacher said. "Very creative." The woman smiled slightly. "Yes, I know." There was a pause. "I wanted to talk about something else," the teacher said carefully. "About what happened in class." The woman nodded like she already knew. "He wrote a story saying his dad was someone famous," the teacher continued. "I made a joke about it, so did the class." The woman's smile faded. "I think I hurt him," the teacher admitted. The woman looked at her for a moment, then spoke softly. "My grandson has never met his father," she said. "Not once. Grew up seeing other kids with dads, seeing men on TV who looked like him, strong, rich, respected. That's who he dreams about." The teacher listened quietly. "He doesn't mean to lie," the woman said. "He means to hope." The room felt heavy after that. The teacher thought about all the times she told students to use their imagination, to dream big. And yet, when one boy tried to do exactly that, she crushed it. "How is he doing at home?" she asked. The woman sighed. "He's quiet now, doesn't talk much, but he helps me with the younger ones. Cooks dinner some nights. Always tries to be strong." The teacher swallowed hard. She thanked the woman for coming. As the woman left, the teacher stayed seated, staring at the empty chair. She didn't feel like a teacher anymore. She felt like someone who had missed something important. Later that week, she watched the boy in class, still quiet, still distant. She wanted to say something, apologize, but she didn't know how. So she waited and hoped. Hoped it wasn't too late. Hoped he hadn't stopped believing completely. The school had been buzzing for days about the upcoming assembly. Flyers were taped to walls, announcements echoed through the hallways during morning homeroom, and teachers reminded students to be on their best behavior. Everyone was excited, though no one knew exactly why. It was just rumored that someone famous would be visiting. On the day of the event, the gym was packed. Rows of folding chairs filled the space, and kids sat crisscross on the floor near the stage. The air smelled like sweaty sneakers mixed with nervous energy. Some students whispered guesses about who the guest might be. A rapper? A basketball star? Maybe even an actor? Then the principal walked out onto the stage, microphone in hand. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice echoing off the walls. "Today, we have a very special guest joining us. Someone who has worked hard, overcome challenges, and inspired millions around the world." The crowd started cheering before she could finish. When the guest finally stepped into view, the room erupted. It was Diddy. He looked sharp in a tailored suit, his smile wide as he waved at the cheering students. He took the mic from the principal and began speaking. "I'm here because I want You all to know something important, he said. His voice was calm but powerful. No matter where you come from, no matter what people say about you, your dreams are valid. Your life matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The boy, sitting toward the back, froze when he heard those words. He recognized them instantly. They were the same ones he'd heard in the video he watched late at night when he couldn't sleep. The same ones that made him believe, even for a little while, that he could be more than what others saw. Diddy kept talking, sharing stories about growing up poor, losing loved ones, and fighting to make something of himself. Every word felt like it hit home, not just for the boy, but for everyone listening. At the end of his speech, Diddy opened the floor for questions. Hands shot up everywhere. When it came time for the boy's turn, he hesitated. His heart pounded, so hard he thought the whole gym could hear it. Slowly, he raised his hand. Diddy pointed at him. You there? What's your question? The boy stood up, his legs trembling slightly. For a moment, he didn't speak. The entire gym went silent, waiting. Finally, he found his voice. I wrote a story once, he began, his words shaky but clear. I said you were my dad. I didn't mean to lie. He paused, swallowing hard. I just wanted to feel like I had someone like you. There was a collective gasp from the audience. Some kids shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others leaned forward, completely absorbed. Diddy tilted his head, studying the boy for a moment. Then, without saying a word, he handed the mic to someone nearby and stepped off the stage. The boy froze as Diddy approached him. All eyes were glued to the scene unfolding in front of them. When Diddy reached him, he knelt down until they were face to face. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Hey, man, Diddy said softly. Dreams are free. Keep dreaming big, all right? Tears welled up in the boy's eyes. He nodded, unable to speak. Diddy pulled him into a hug. Not a quick pat on the back kind of hug, but a real, heartfelt embrace. The kind that says, I see you. As they parted, the gym exploded into applause. Kids cheered, teachers wiped away tears, and somewhere in the back, the teacher who had mocked him weeks earlier sat frozen, her hands covering her mouth. Later that evening, videos of the moment went viral online. Social media feeds lit up with screenshots and clips of Diddy hugging the boy. People commented things like, "This is why representation matters and every kid deserves to dream big." But behind the scenes, the boy wasn't thinking about fame or going viral. He was thinking about how it felt to be seen, for the first time in a long time. Back at school the next day, everything was different. Students who used to tease him now gave him high fives in the hallway. Teachers smiled at him more often. Even the principal stopped by his classroom to say how proud she was of him. And then there was her, the teacher who had laughed. She tried to catch his eye during class, but he avoided looking her way. She wanted to say something, to apologize. Again, but the words stuck in her throat. That night she lay awake staring at the ceiling. She replayed the image of Diddy kneeling beside the boy over and over in her mind. How could she have missed it? How could she have failed to see the weight of what he was trying to express? She realized now that mocking him hadn't just hurt his feelings. It had crushed part of him. And while the world celebrated the beautiful moment between him and Diddy, she couldn't shake the guilt eating away at her. The next morning she arrived at school early. She sat at her desk staring at the blank screen of her laptop. Finally, she opened a new document and began typing. An apology. Not just for him, but for herself. For failing to understand. For letting her own insecurities get in the way of seeing the truth. By the time the bell rang, she had drafted a letter. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. She printed it out and tucked it into her bag, knowing she'd need to deliver it soon. Little did she know, the hardest part was yet to come. The video of Diddy hugging the boy kept spreading like wildfire. People couldn't stop talking about it. News outlets picked up the story. Social media influencers shared their thoughts, and even late-night talk show hosts joked about how Diddy adopted another son. But amidst all the buzz, someone leaked what had happened in class. The teacher mocking him, the laughter, the humiliation. At first, no one believed it. Some thought it was just internet drama, something made up to get clicks. But then a student posted a short clip they'd secretly recorded that day. In the shaky footage, you could hear the teacher laughing and making sarcastic comments. The audio wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough to spark outrage. Comments poured in under the post. Who does this teacher think she is? She didn't just laugh. She crushed him. This is why kids grow up feeling invisible. Soon hashtags started trending. Stand with him. Your dreams are free. Apologize now. Parents called the school demanding answers. Teachers whispered nervously in the hallways. Even local news stations showed up outside the building, microphones ready, to catch anyone willing to speak. Inside the school, things were tense. The principal called an emergency meeting with staff. Everyone sat quietly as she addressed the situation. We've been put under a microscope, she said, her voice firm, but tired. This isn't just about one classroom anymore, it's about trust, respect, how we treat our students. Effective immediately, Ms. Harper will be placed on administrative leave pending further review. Ms. Harper didn't argue. She nodded, silently gathered her things and left the room without saying a word. Back at home, she sat on her couch staring at the TV. Every channel seemed to be covering the story. Reporters interviewed experts about bullying in schools. Commentators debated whether teachers should face consequences for insensitive remarks. And everywhere she looked, there were images of Diddy hugging the boy. Images that reminded her of everything she'd done wrong. She replayed the moment over and over in her mind. The way he stood up in class, his voice trembling as he read his story. The way she dismissed him with a laugh. The way he shrunk into his seat afterward, disappearing, before her very eyes. Her guilt felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. All she could do was think about him. One evening, she decided to write another letter, not just to him, but to everyone. She wanted to explain herself, not as an excuse, but as a confession. I failed, she wrote. I failed not only as a teacher, but as a human being. I let my own discomfort blind me to what really mattered. I saw a child reaching out for connection, for hope, and instead of lifting him up, I tore him down. She went on to describe how she planned to make amends. She would volunteer her time mentoring kids who needed support. She would attend workshops on cultural sensitivity and empathy. She would do whatever it took to ensure nothing like this ever happened again. When she finished writing, she printed out copies of the letter and sent them to the principal, the superintendent, and a few trusted colleagues. Then she posted a public version online, attaching a photo of herself so people would know who she was. Within hours, her inbox was flooded with messages. Some were angry, calling her every name imaginable. Others were kinder, thanking her for owning up to her mistake. A few parents reached out to say they forgave her, but only if she meant it. Meanwhile, life at school was changing too. For the boy, things were better, but not perfect. He still got stares in the hallway. Some kids treated him like a celebrity, asking for autographs or joking about calling Diddy. Others gave him space, unsure of what to say. Teachers checked in on him more often, making sure he was okay, but deep down, he wasn't sure how to feel. On one hand, he was proud of himself for standing up during the assembly, for having the courage to admit why he wrote the story. On the other hand, he couldn't forget the sting of being laughed at, of feeling small. One afternoon, after school, let out, he stayed behind in the library to finish some homework. As he packed up his bag, he noticed someone standing by the door. It was Ms. Harper. She looked different, smaller somehow. Her usual confident posture was gone, replaced by slumped shoulders and a hesitant expression. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked softly. He hesitated, then nodded. They sat down at a table near the window. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice shaking. "What I did in class, it was wrong, cruel. I hurt you when you were just trying to share something important, something real." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't look away. She forced herself to meet his gaze. "I'm sorry," she continued. "More sorry than words can say. I hope someday you can forgive me." He stared at her, processing her words. Part of him wanted to stay quiet to let her sit with the awkwardness, but another part, the bigger part, felt something shift inside. "You hurt me," he said finally, his voice steady. "But I don't want you to be broken too." Her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected that. He went on. "You can fix it. You can help other kids like me. Kids who need someone to believe in them." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I will," she promised. "I swear I will." They talked for a little while longer. Not about apologies or forgiveness, but about dreams, about music, about how sometimes pretending isn't lying, it's hoping. By the time they parted ways, the sun was setting outside the library windows. The sky glowed orange and pink, casting long shadows across the floor. As he walked home that evening, he realized something. He wasn't just dreaming for himself anymore. He was dreaming for everyone, who needed a second chance, even the ones who messed up along the way, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Months passed and life began to settle into a new rhythm. The boy who once dreamed of having Diddy as his dad became something else entirely. A leader. Not the kind who gave speeches or ran clubs, but the quiet type, the one other kids looked up to without him even realizing it. He started helping younger students during lunch breaks, showing them how to solve math problems or encouraging them when they felt stuck. He didn't do it for attention. He did it because he knew what it was like to feel invisible. And now that people saw him, really saw him, he wanted to pass that feeling along. Ms. Harper returned to school after her leave, though she wasn't teaching anymore. Instead, she worked behind the scenes, organizing programs and workshops aimed at supporting students like him. She called it the Dream Keepers Initiative. It was designed to give kids space to dream big, no matter where they came from or what challenges they faced. The first event took place on a Saturday morning. A group of local mentors showed up. Artists, entrepreneurs, athletes, all volunteering their time to connect with students. There were workshops on writing, music production, photography, and even cooking. For the kids, it felt like stepping into another world, a place where anything seemed possible. On that day, the boy stood near the back of the room, watching everything unfold. He didn't know what to expect when Ms. Harper asked him to come early and help set up. But as he moved through the crowd, handing out flyers and guiding younger kids to different stations, he realized something important. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about all of them. Near the end of the event, Ms. Harper grabbed the mic and stepped onto a small stage at the front of the room. "Thank you all for being here today," she said, her voice steady but warm. "This program wouldn't exist without someone very special." She turned and pointed to him. "I owe him an apology and more. Because of him, I learned how to be better, how to see beyond my own biases and truly understand what our students need." The room erupted into applause. Kids cheered, some whistling loudly. He felt his cheeks burn red, but he couldn't stop smiling. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed, Ms. Harper walked over to him. "You okay?" she asked gently. He nodded. "Yeah, just never thought I'd hear that from you." She smiled softly. "Well, get used to it. You've earned it." That night he sat at his kitchen table finishing homework while his little brother played nearby. His grandmother cooked dinner, humming a tune under her breath. Life felt normal again, but better somehow. Like there was a light shining in places that had been dark before. A few weeks later, he received a letter in the mail. At first he thought it was junk. It happened often enough. But when he opened it, his heart skipped a beat. It was from Diddy's team. They wrote to thank him for sharing his story and invited him to visit their office for a summer internship. They said they admired his courage and wanted to show him firsthand what it meant to build dreams into reality. He read the letter 3 times before running to show his grandmother. "What does it say?" she asked. wiping her hands on a towel. "They want me to work with them," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "For real." Her eyes filled with tears. She pulled him into a tight hug. "You deserve it," she whispered. "Never forget that." The day of the internship arrived quicker than he expected. When he stepped into Diddy's office building, he felt overwhelmed by the energy. People buzzed around, phones ringing, laptops open on every desk. Music played softly in the background, blending with conversations about projects and deadlines. Diddy greeted him personally, shaking his hand firmly. "Welcome," he said with a grin. "Glad you could make it." For the next few weeks, he shadowed members of the team, learning how songs were produced, how videos were edited, and how business deals came together. He soaked it all in, asking questions whenever he could. Everyone treated him like family, offering advice and encouragement. One afternoon, Diddy sat down with him in a quiet corner of the office. "So," he said, leaning back in his chair, "what do you think? Think you can handle this life?" The boy laughed nervously. "I don't know yet, but I'm trying." Diddy nodded approvingly. "That's all anyone can ask for. Trying is half the battle." Then he added, "You know, you remind me of myself when I was your age. Full of hope, full of fight. Don't lose that." By the end of the summer, he had gained more than just experience. He had found confidence, not just in himself, but in the power of his dreams. And he carried that confidence back to school with him. Back at home, Ms. Harper watched the transformation unfold from afar. She saw the boy walking taller, speaking louder and inspiring others. She saw herself changing too, becoming softer, more patient, more aware. One evening, she sat alone in her living room, flipping through old photos. In one picture, she stood beside a group of students, smiling brightly. Back then, she thought she had all the answers. Now she knew better. She picked up her phone and typed out a message. "Thank you for teaching me how to be human again." She hesitated for a moment, then sent it. Seconds later, her phone buzzed with a reply. "You taught me how to keep dreaming, so I guess we're even." She smiled, setting the phone down. For the first time in months, she felt peace. A year had passed since that day in class, the one where laughter turned into shame and later into something bigger than anyone could have imagined. The school hallways looked the same, but if you paid close attention, you'd notice small changes. Kids didn't rush past each other anymore. They stopped to chat or share jokes. Teachers smiled more often, asking questions not just about grades, but about dreams. And somewhere in all those little shifts, hope began to take root. The boy who once dreamed of having Diddy as his dad was now known around school as the kid who made things better. He wasn't loud about it. He never bragged or sought attention, but he carried himself differently. His shoulders were straighter, his voice steadier. When younger students came to him for advice, he listened without judgment, offering words that felt like lifelines. "You can do it," he'd say over and over again. "Just keep trying." He didn't realize how much those simple words meant to others until one afternoon when a shy seventh grader approached him after school. She handed him a crumpled piece of paper, a story she'd written about becoming an astronaut, and asked nervously, "Do you think I could really do this?" He read her story carefully, nodding along. Then he looked her in the eye and said, "If you believe it, then yes. You'll figure it out." Her face lit up, and she ran off, clutching the paper like it was gold. Watching her go, he felt a warmth spread through his chest. This was what mattered. Not fame, not money, but knowing you'd helped someone see their own worth. Meanwhile, Ms. Harper continued working on the Dream Keepers initiative. What started as a small program grew into something much larger. Local businesses donated supplies. Artists offered free workshops. Even parents volunteered their time, eager to support the next generation. Every Friday, the school hosted events where kids showcased their talents: singing, dancing, painting, writing. For many, it was the first time they ever stood in front of a crowd and felt proud. One Friday evening, during one of these showcases, Ms. Harper stood near the back of the auditorium, watching proudly as students performed. The boy was there too, helping coordinate the event. As the final act ended and the audience erupted into applause, she walked over to him. "You've done so much for them," she said softly. "For me too." He shrugged, smiling slightly. "We did it together." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "You remind me why I became a teacher in the first place." They shared a quiet moment before heading outside, where families gathered under strings of twinkling lights. Laughter filled the air, mingling with the sound of music, still playing faintly from inside. For the first time in years, the school felt alive, not just as a building, but as a community. That summer, the boy returned to Diddy's office for another internship. This time, he wasn't nervous. He knew the ropes, understood the rhythm of the work, and most importantly, believed in himself. On his last day, Diddy pulled him aside for a private conversation. "You've grown," Diddy said, studying him closely. "I can see it in your eyes," the boy grinned. "Thanks to you, and everyone else who believed in me." Diddy shook his head. "No, son. Belief is powerful, but it only works if you're willing to fight for it. You did that. Don't forget." Hey. As they hugged goodbye, the boy promised himself he wouldn't. Not ever. When he got home, he found a letter waiting for him. It was from Ms. Harper. Inside, she wrote, "Dear Dreamkeeper, I used to think teaching was about giving answers. Now I know it's about listening, about seeing, about believing in the impossible. Because of you, I've learned to dream again. Not just for myself, but for every student who walks through my door. Thank you for showing me the way. Forever grateful, Ms. Harper." He folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his journal. Someday, he thought, he'd show it to his own kids. Maybe they'd understand how far he'd come and how far they could go too. Years later, when people asked him how he became successful, he always told the same story. Not the part about meeting Diddy or landing internships, but the part about a teacher who laughed at him and then changed because of him. "She taught me forgiveness," he'd say, "and I taught her hope. Together, we built something bigger than either of us." By then, he was mentoring kids himself, running programs inspired by the Dreamkeepers initiative. He traveled across cities, speaking at schools and conferences, sharing his journey with anyone who would listen. His message was simple: dream big, stay strong, lift others as you climb. Back at the school where it all began, Ms. Harper retired after decades of teaching. Her last day was bittersweet, filled with hugs and tears from students and colleagues alike. But as she packed up her classroom, she found a note taped to her desk. Written in neat handwriting were 3 words: "Thank you, teacher." She smiled, holding the note close. Despite everything, she'd done okay. More than okay, actually. She'd helped create a ripple effect, one that would keep spreading long after she was gone. And somewhere out there, a boy-turned-man looked up at the stars, dreaming not just for himself but for everyone counting on him to light the way.